Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel and hanging out with me a little bit. And guys, today I'm going to make the case why we need to get rid of co-anglers in bass fishing tournaments. And before all the co-anglers get their panties in a wad about this, I want to replace it with something better. That'll be better for the co-angler, better for the boater, because right now it's messed up because the current co-angler format, the situation around co-anglers right now, it directly affects the outcome of a tournament for the boater. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. I've been victim of that many times myself. So I got a better solution that we're going to go over in today's video here. Also, guys, before we get started, I do want to announce that we finally set the date for my first live stream. It's going to be February 12th. It'll be a week from this coming Thursday, February 12th. 6:30 Central Standard Time. Going to have the first live stream, and this live stream is going to be open to, it's going to be a private live stream that's going to be available to my channel members and my Patreon members. So if you guys want to be part of this live stream, we're going to talk about things you can't talk about on the main channel, interact with each other on comments. It's going to be a good educational fishing tips, advice, everything like that. All you have to do is go to any of my YouTube channels, to the home page, hit the join button, join up as a channel member, or go to my description in the video, any of my videos, and hit the Patreon member and sign up to be a Patreon member. So those will be a private live stream available to those members of the channel. So I really appreciate that. Okay, let's talk about why co-anglers need to be a thing of the past here. I have fished with a ton of different co-anglers, well over 1,000 in my tournament career. And I can tell you for sure that co-anglers affect the outcome of a tournament in a lot of different ways, in terms of pressuring their boater, catching fish that their boater would have probably caught, creating, stress and tension between each other, casting up in front of the boat. A lot of times when you have a real aggressive co-angler, it'll throw the boater's momentum off. In other words, let's say, for example, I'm working a lay down log in the water, and this lay down log, the way the fish are biting, I may have to make 50 casts around this lay down log from different angles. And the last thing I want is for me to, pitch my jig into that lay down tree, and then I've got my co-angler casting, in front of the boat, throwing his spinnerbait 2 foot away from my jig on the same tree. This is the type of stuff that pisses the boater off, and it gets into their mind. So I've had many times, guys, where I've had these overly aggressive co-anglers that have done the very same thing that I just talked about. And that's all I can think about is I've got to stop this goob in the back of the boat from freaking casting over my head. I can't focus on fishing. It's hard enough to focus on you catching bass if you have to worry about some guy in the back of the boat that's trying to catch the exact bass that you're trying to catch. And I've seen it goes both ways. I've seen co-anglers, they figure out a bait that the fish are biting on that the pro doesn't know anything about. Then the pro sees their co-angler catching them on that bait. He makes a switch and he may win the tournament off of something his co-angler showed him. Or I've seen the same opposite where, I've seen co-anglers, including in my own experience, that have caught fish, right next to where I was fishing that cost you winning the tournament. Without a doubt, co-anglers affect the outcome of a tournament, which is not right. You should not have a uncontrolled variable like a co-angler determining the outcome of a tournament. It'd be like if you had, if Tiger Woods was playing the Masters, and then there were some local weekend dudes that are teeing off behind him and, hit his ball while it was on the green and knocked it, 20 foot away from the hole farther or something. So it's a variable that does not need to be in place. Now, here is what the alternative is to that. Most of the time, in a co-angler type of a situation, you've got several different types of co-anglers. You've got the co-anglers out there that are just there to have a good time. They're curious about it, just want to get their feet wet in the tournament world. You got some guys out there that are laid back and they just want to kick back and relax. You have some guys out there that are sort of like a little bit competitive, but they're not real competitive. They're just sort of like in between. And then you got the worst of the worst, which are these guys out there that are just, they're out there just to compete, and they're out there to catch as many fish as they can, and they're going to try to beat the pro in the front of the boat. Those are the worst co-anglers to fish with. Here's what needs to happen that'll fix all this completely. Number one, get rid of the entire co-angler format and offer up positions to these same anglers as marshals where they don't fish. Now, this is how you incentivize that. Say, for example, you got a BFL tournament, or you got a Toyota Series tournament, or Bassmaster Open, or whatever the circuit is that allows co-anglers. All you have to do is tack on like an extra $100 onto the entry fee for the tournament, $50, $100, whatever. That $50 to $100 that the extra that the boater pays in that tournament, it goes to the marshal. So what happens is you get this marshal in the boat with you, and they have an opportunity, and this is how you have to frame it, to spend a day with a highly skilled bass angler. It's going to be like a seminar on the water that you get paid for. You're going to be in the boat. You're going to see this angler, how he makes his decisions on the water, how he makes adjustments on the water, how he figures the fish out. It's an on the water 8-hour seminar, and on top of it, you're going to get $100, for your efforts on, showing up to be a marshal. And one of the things about it is, if part of the encouragement to this, as far as the tournament directors, you say this to them, say, okay, look, you're not going to have a co-angler that you got to worry about catching your fish. But what we want you to do is we want you to go to the extra effort to teach this person you're with as much as you can about bass fishing. So say, for example, I'm on a flipping bite. I'm flipping flooded bushes, and I've got my marshal in the boat with me. One of the things I'll do as a trade-off for not having to have to worry about this guy catching fish behind me is I'm going to explain to him exactly what I'm doing and say, hey dude, this is why I'm using this jig color. This is why I'm using this size of jig. Explain to him exactly what I'm doing. I said, this is where these fish are going to be positioned at. It's like, see that bush right there? That fish is going to be right there in that bush, and I'll explain to you why the fish are there. So it becomes this educational experience for the angler, for the co-angler. And guys, I promise you, they're going to come out of it with so much more information and a better experience than as if they were there actually competing. Because if I get one of those guys out there that is like hard charging, trying to catch every fish behind me, I'm not going to do anything to help them out. Zero to help them out, because this is a business. I'm trying to catch as many bass as I possibly can to help feed my family or whatever, and I don't want to have to worry about some dude in the back of the boat jacking a 4-pounder, out of this log I'm getting ready to fish while I'm retying a bait or something like that. But in that other situation, I will do everything I can to help him out in the marshal situation. So if you're a co-angler, and the whole experience about being a co-angler is you want to learn how to become a better fisherman, this is a win-win situation if the co-angler is eliminated, where they don't bring any rods with them. All they do is sit there and watch all day long and learn. Because, if you're in it to learn, then there's no better format to that. And if you're in it to compete, then pony up and put your money up as a boater, and then you don't have to worry about fishing as a co-angler. But in my own experience, guys, I have probably fished, 100 tournaments throughout my career where my co-angler directly affected the outcome of my tournament. And it could be that they caught some fish behind me, but more than anything else, what they've done is, if I get an aggressive co-angler, it gets in my head and throws my pace off. It's like, right off the bat, if I get some guy that's whizzing his bait right up in front of the boat all the time, or if I'm trying to break down, a piece of structure and really be thorough, like I said, his bait plops in 2 foot away from mine, and then it's in my head all day long. And that is devastating. That's just as devastating as him catching fish behind me, because that's all I'm thinking about. Let's say, for example, there's a nice laydown tree. I'm coming up on this nice laydown tree. So instead of like me being tunnel vision focused on, okay, how am I going to catch the bass in this laydown tree in front of me? The first thing I'm doing is like, how do I keep this dude in the back of the boat where he's not going to cast into this tree and freaking jack it all up for me. That's what happens when you have one of those overly aggressive co-anglers. And you cannot underestimate how devastating that is to your performance at the end of the day. All you dudes out there that are boaters that have been doing this as long as I have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's just one part of it, because there's other situations where, let's say, for example, I'm on a really good spinnerbait bite, and maybe the fishing's a little bit slow on a spinnerbait, but I've got some guy in the back of the boat that's throwing a worm out of the back of the boat, and he's catching a good one every 30 or 45 minutes, and I'm sitting here, I'm second guessing myself at this point. Let me give you a prime example of what I was talking about. I was fishing a tournament at Lake Okeechobee. It was a FLW tournament, and I was on a really good swim bait bite. I was catching them on that mega bass, the big spark shad, reeling it over the top of the grass. And I wasn't getting that many bites, but I was getting some really quality fish. And guys, this guy in the back of the boat, what he was doing is he took a Cinco and he threw it out the back of the boat as far as he could, and he just hold it. He just drag it like that. And about once every other hour, he'd catch a big one. He wound up with 23 pounds out of the back of my boat that day. And he wasn't getting hardly any bites, but it's like about once an hour, he'd be dragging that Cinco through the grass, and one would load up on it, and he'd catch it. And he tried casting the Cinco everywhere, and he could never get a bite. The only way that he could get a bite was trolling that Cinco behind the boat as I was working on the trolling motor. So I'm like, at this point, I'm thinking, and I've got like an 11-pound limit in the boat. I'm catching fish, but I'm catching small ones. So I put on like the Cinco, and I'm casting it around, and it's like I'm not catching anything, and he's dragging it behind the boat, and I try dragging it behind the boat, and I can't catch anything. So by the end of the day, I'm all spun out because I can't focus on my swim bait deal because he's catching big ones, trolling a Cinco out of the back of the boat. So the point is, if that guy wasn't even back there, if he wasn't fishing at all and wasn't catching those fish on a Cinco behind the boat, trolling it, I could have bared down and focused on that spark shad and probably done a lot better. But instead of me just laser visioned on the spark shad, I'd pick up that Cinco every 10 or 15 minutes after he'd catch one, and I wound up wasting half my day doing it without catching a bite. This is what I'm talking about, how it affects your day throughout the course of a day. But anyway, that's the solution, guys. Turn the co-angler program into marshals, market it, and get it moving forward. This is the most educational on the water experience. You're going to make $100 coming to to learn as you can. You're going to get paid $100 to basically have an on the water guided seminar. That's what you have to do. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about it. I think it's a win-win for everybody. We'll talk to y'all later.